Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This one's going to be my 2021 Avatar and Korra story and merchandise preview. This will be the third of 3 videos that I do at the end of every year to round off the year. You've already seen released on the channel my top 5 story moments for Avatar and Korra from 2020, as well as my 2020 Avatar year in review. They were the first 2 videos, and this will be the third one to round off the year in Avatar by previewing and looking ahead to next year. So that's what we're going to do. And as ever, I think we need to start off with, when it comes to these things and release dates, the dates are accurate as of the making of this video. Some of these dates may change before release, especially with COVID still ongoing. It is likely that some of this stuff will change. Now, I think this will affect the action figures more than the books. The books, if there is any date changes, I'm going to guess it'll only be like a week or 2 and nothing too serious. And yeah, the books is where we are going to start, because typically they make up, I think, the majority of how I view each year, because that's where the story content these last few years has come from. And I think we have to start with Dark Horse Comics. So here's their confirmed lineup of books for next year right now. Now, of course, this is the 2021 lineup as of the end of 2020. I'll get into the speculation about what other books I think will also be released in 2020, but haven't been confirmed yet. But let's go through these. So we have, first of all, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy, the second Avatar one-shot comic, a piece of new story content. This one's coming February 16th or 17th, depending on if you're getting it from a comic book store or just normally. So that's coming out first in 2021. That will be followed very quickly by the Rift Omnibus. So this is going to be the reprint of the Rift, brand new cover, 3-in-1, continuing on the omnibus format, coming out February 10th or 23rd, again depending on comic book store or basically any other retailer. That's going to be followed up in March by the Legend of Korra Book 1 Air 2nd edition Art of the Animated Series. So this will both be the standard 2nd edition and the deluxe 2nd edition, March 10th or March 23rd, again depending on what retailer you get it from. So that's going to be cool to continue on the deluxe sets. And then the last newly confirmed piece of content for Dark Horse is Suki Alone. So the end of the first trilogy of one-shot comics for Avatar, Suki Alone, coming June 22nd or 23rd, again depending on where you're going to get it from. So overall, it's a pretty interesting lineup. 2 new pieces of new story content and 2 reprint style books. I've already read Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy because I got an advanced review copy. You can check out a video up on my channel where I give my non-spoiler review of that if you want insight into that right now. Overall, I think it's a good book. It's a vast improvement over Katara and the Pirate Silver, but maybe still not exactly what we want out of the one-shots, but definitely a step in the right direction. Suki Alone, as the end of the trilogy of one-shots, definitely seems like much more like what we want. Because it's not one of the main characters and is instead sort of our main supporting character in Suki, there's a lot of ground to cover, there's a lot of depth that we sort of need to add to her character, so her getting a spotlight book all to herself seems ideal. Great. I've seen nothing but positivity about the announcement of this book. Omnibus editions are great, as I said, and the deluxe editions and 2nd edition of the art book is going to be cool just to see the new covers as they're released, but I don't think there's too much to say about the reprints. For me, it is a lot about the new story content. Next up, we'll cover the novels, and unfortunately no news right now about any new novel coming out in 2021. so we have to rely on reprints on the novel side of things. So we're going to be getting paperback versions of both The Rise of Kyoshi and The Shadow of Kyoshi in 2021, and both of these books are going to be coming out on the same day, the 6th of July. So this should be fun, and not everyone likes hardcover books, so getting the paperback, the cheaper version of these two books, is definitely going to be interesting for some people. I know the hardback of Rise of Kyoshi was a bit tough to find last year. I don't think it's particularly a problem right now, but either way, the paperback should open the options of various different ways to get these two books, and hopefully, I suppose it's a good opportunity to like have your rereads done or start a reread on the 6th of July, because new people might be getting into it. Something to just keep an eye out for. In terms of other books, there's two announced right now. First one is the official cookbook for Avatar: The Last Airbender from Insight Editions. This book's coming out on the 24th of August. This book, of course, is going to be primarily about like real world food, real world cooking instructions and ingredients. And the only real Avatar stuff is just going to be that the dishes are going to be obviously inspired by Avatar, have Avatar related names, and they're going to, I suppose, attempt to bring some sort of like real world sort of flavor text to them. Definitely to me this seems like more of a book to get if you're interested in cooking rather than as an Avatar fan. Like if you don't cook, you probably don't really need this book, is the impression I get from the preview pages. It looks like it's going to be fun, but it is a new, different type of book. We haven't had something like this before, but it's a bit specific. They do cookbooks for like a lot of other franchises, and I think they tend to blend together a little bit. The lack of new information definitely hurts it from getting it from a kind of just new content perspective. And then the other new book we're getting, I suppose it's going to be a series. I assume we'll probably see a few of these over the course of the year. Avatar Screen Comics, Volume 1. Is going to be coming out on the 25th of May 2021. Now, what this book is going to be is it's basically going to be screenshots from episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they're going to have comic-style speech bubbles coming out of the characters. That's why it's screen comics. It's basically turning screenshots of the show into a comic using the dialogue from the show. So it's going to be a new book, but it's kind of a reprint book because it is just sort of, I suppose, a different type of adaptation of the show itself. Volume 1 is going to cover the first 6 episodes, so that gives you a sense for sort of how many of these books there's going to be. There's probably going to be at least 10, potentially 10 plus of these if they do the full series, so just be aware of that. I don't really think many Avatar fans need to be too interested in this. This seems like more of a thing for like kids will like this if they're learning how to read, or again, when we start to get pictures of what it actually looks like, maybe it will have a nice cover. Maybe the way it's done will make it feel more unique, especially if it maybe does cover like every single scene. That could be something of note. But we'll move into speculation on other stuff that's coming. So again, this is sort of pretty much how we know the releases are going to go, more or less, but this stuff has not been fully announced, confirmed yet. There's no product listings up with specific information about this stuff yet. So it's speculation, but logical speculation. So the first one, there is a new Korra comic trilogy coming. It has just not been announced yet. I would expect part 1 and maybe part 2 to release in 2021. Depending on how early this new comic gets officially announced. So we've been waiting for this for quite a while. Runes of the Empire Part 3 came out in February, and they've been more or less teasing the idea of what's next since March, and we haven't really heard any concrete information since then. My expectation would be that for sure within within January or February, we're going to have to find out about this. And then it's going to be probably at least 6 months until we actually get the release of this, if not longer, meaning that, yeah, I do think it's only logical to fit in one part during the year. Maybe, just maybe, part 2 might slip in as like a middle, late December release, but we'll get to talking about that a little bit more later on. On On the Avatar comic side of things, after Suki alone, it's going to be difficult to say how long it will take for them to put out the next Avatar comic. It's likely to be the start of a new one-shot trilogy, given that that's the new format the Avatar comics have. If they are quick, we might see the first one of this new one-shot trilogy in 2021, but I would lean in the direction of probably not, but we might see it announced. I just think that once Suki alone comes out, typically they do tend to take a bit of a break. They might change creative teams. We don't know what the situation is there. Even if they stick with the same creative team, just because they're going to have to plan a new trilogy, it means there'll be further delays. So again, maybe right at the end of the year they'll fit one in, but I doubt it. I think more like early 2022 will probably be when we see the next one, or whatever it is they're doing next for Avatar. But, you know, they did one-shot trilogy. I doubt they're going to leave it at that. I think we'll go into other types of one-shots. In terms of omnibus editions, I think for sure we are going to see the Smoke and Shadow as well as the North and South omnibus editions released, like announced and released in 2021. And then the Imbalance omnibus edition, I think we'll see it announced in 2021, but it probably won't release until 2022. It will be interesting to see what they do with that, because I think the spine images is going to be covered with the first 5 books. So I guess, you know, they're going to start a new spine image with Imbalance, which could be interesting, you know, once we see that actually come out. But anyway, we move on. With regards to the art book reprints and the deluxe editions, I think for sure we will see the Korra Book 2 and the Korra Book 3 second edition art books, as well as their deluxe counterparts, released in 2021. And we will probably get the Book 4 art book and the mysterious 6th new deluxe edition book announced ahead of a 2022 release. With the omnibus and the art books, the way they tend to work is that it's 4 months between releases. That's the way it's worked so far. So if you know, the Rift omnibus is coming out in February, that means 4 months later in June is when the next one will come out, and then 4 months after that in October is when the next one will come out. And then the art books are more or less the same, except they're, I think, a month off. So it's like March is when the book 1 art book is coming out, so it will be July, and then November more than likely for the book 3 art book. They're my speculation on it, but again, they could slip into the following month. Depends on how it all works out. I don't think we will get a novel released in 2021. I think we would have heard about it already if we were going to see it released next year. But I think we probably have to hear about what's next from the novel format in 2021 as news, though. And then finally, a potential library edition collection of the first 3 one-shot comics likely won't be a 2021 release, but may be announced for early 2022. So a library edition to collect Katara and the Pirate Silver, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy, and Suki alone. I think for sure that book is going to happen. I can't see them missing that opportunity. But again, Suki alone is out in June. They typically take a break between like 6, 7, or 8 months after the release of the last book before they put out the collected edition. So again, maybe it might be very late 2021 and actually come out, but I think more early 2022 is what I actually think is going to be the case. So, putting together what is confirmed as well as what is likely to happen, this looks to be the lineup of books for 2021, minus sort of books where it's like impossible to predict that they actually would be released, because there's the Dark Horse have maybe teased that there's maybe more Korra books coming out, but again, it's hard to speculate what exactly the situation is there. So you can see here, there's a mix of like a few new books there, a lot of reprints once again, and then a lot of these books are not confirmed yet, but are highly likely. Like most of the not confirmed books are like pretty much they're going to get confirmed at some point. I don't think anyone would disagree with the idea that we will see the next 2 omnibus books come out next year. I don't think people would disagree that we're going to see the next 2 art book reprints come out. And Korra Comic Part 3, pretty much has to come out next year. And I think that's the main thing to discuss here, is that this is roughly in order throughout the year that I think the books will come out. So I do think the Korra comic part 3, number 3, part 1, will come out after the Avatar cookbook, so basically after August. So I really do think either late August, September, or October is likely where we'll see the first the first part of this new Korra comic come out. And then again, the way the other releases work, as I just explained, is like as follows. So it means that in terms of new books, Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy, Suki Alone, and the first part of the new Korra comic are going to be the main new pieces of story content, backed up by the Avatar cookbook and screen comics. That seems pretty solid, but what I would say is that very dependent on what exactly the Korra comic is about. Because if that's another like random stuff in Republic City book, that's not particularly exciting, I think, to a lot of people, including myself. But if it is, say, the Let's Go to the Fire Nation Korra comic, all of a sudden that's a whole different story, and we're talking like really good. So the details of the Korra comic are very, very important here. Otherwise, like, just as a collector, like, there's a lot of nice stuff throughout the year with regards to new omnibuses, the deluxe editions, the novels getting reprints and stuff like that. But definitely a few announcements from Dark Horse about like what's next for Avatar and Korra would very much help us in terms of addressing how the year is going to go. So we move into merchandise from here, and we're going to start with Funko Pops. So no images yet, so nothing really official yet, but typically with Funko Pops, rumored information, kind of leaked information, is typically correct and confirmed, and that's exactly the way things are going with the second wave of Avatar Pops news. We pretty much have confirmation, more or less, that we're going to be getting a wave 2, and the standard Funko Pops are going to be Zhao, Ozai, Suki, and Tai Li. And then we'll also be getting an Aang as a special Pop Super, a new line of Pops that they're going to be doing, and it looks like Aang is actually going to be the first in that line. A special Aang using all of the elements, likely him in his big Sozin's Comet, Avatar State, sphere and ring of elements big pose. So my guess is that this will be a kind of normal Aang in the Avatar state in terms of the size, but it be a really giant effect part and sort of diorama around him. I think that's the way it's going to work. Kind of almost wouldn't be surprised if there maybe is a little bit of an electronic element to this, where it maybe has some lights and sounds or something like that, like they've done with other Pops, but we have to wait and see. There are also rumors of some exclusives, such as a Blue Spirit Zuko and a Spirit Aang. I think that's meant to be like a transparent Aang. But again, no pictures just yet. But a lot of this seems pretty confirmed right now. So, that's why I'm putting it here and not in a just speculation section. I think this will get confirmed. Moving into Diamond Select Toys, who made up the bulk of the sort of, figure merchandise from 2020, they'll also be doing quite a lot for 2021. So Wave 3 is going to be coming out in the springtime, and that is Toph and Ozai. Wave 4 coming in the summer is going to be Aang and Sokka, Sozin's Comet Aang, of course, and also confirmed is a Katara diorama to kind of go with the Aang diorama that we got from before. Diorama, statue, whatever way you want to call it, also coming in summer. The specific release dates are going to change. Typically, toys kind of go back and forth with their release dates. They more have release windows rather than exact dates, in that Wave 3 of the Avatar figures is more like February to April. Summer is like May to July, just so you're aware of that. But we'll get into some speculation on Diamond Select in just a minute. First, we'll go over to Dark Horse Direct. They have the Aang and Korra bookends that they recently announced. They're going to be coming out somewhere in April to June release window. And obviously these ones are relatively expensive. They're like $80 each, or you can get them both from Dark Horse Direct for a little bit of a discount. Much more expensive than, say, the Katara diorama from the previous slide, which is only $50. They look good, but definitely when I did my news video about these, a lot of people complaining about the price of these. But still cool that we're getting more sort of statue-like merchandise. Also, 2021 is going to see a few more companies enter the market with regards to them having the Avatar license and making Avatar and Korra action figures. The main one with the most hype behind them are McFarlane Toys. They announced in 2020 they are going to be making figures for Avatar The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, and we should see the first of these announced and released in 2021. They will be the first company to make Korra action figures and should offer good competition against Diamond Select with their Avatar figures. So this is going to be really fun. I think everyone thinks McFarlane will do a better job than Diamond Select. They're more well known, they've been around longer, usually higher quality than Diamond Select. There's a bit of hype behind these, but it also means they have to live up to that hype, in that we now have something to sort of judge Avatar action figures against. For the most part, Diamond Select's figures have been pretty solid, but lacking in a few areas. So McFarlane has something to sort of aim for, to improve on, and that's what we're going to see when I suppose we see some images of these first. It definitely is a good sign that they are doing Avatar and Korra. None of the other companies are really doing the Korra side of things, so that's very good to see. It makes it feel like, oh yeah, they're going all in on just Avatar in general, not just ATLA hype. In terms of other action figures, like I said, a few more companies got the license. So Avatar will be getting some figures in the Loyal Subjects Best Action line. That's the BST-AXN. This is a line with many franchises, so their waves are typically like, I think like 10 figures, but it's like 2 from specific franchises, like 2 from Full Metal Alchemist, 2 from Cowboy Bebop, 2 from this other thing. So Avatar is going to be one of the franchises in a future wave of Best Action. These will be 5-inch figures, but the key thing here is that unlike McFarlane and Diamond Select, who have full lines of just Avatar and Korra, it looks like in this case it probably will only be we get a handful of figures. I wouldn't be expecting minor characters to show up in this line, and we probably will only see a handful of like the main characters get figures over the first few years of Avatar being involved in this line. Mego will also be releasing at least one Avatar action figure. That figure is going to be 8 inches and it's going to have fabric clothing, is going to be the unique aspect. So just for context, McFarlane and Diamond Select are typically in the 6 to 7 inch scale. Loyal Subjects is 5-inch, and then Mego is going to be 8-inch. So that's the scaling type stuff. So in terms of figure speculation, Diamond Select have confirmed they are working on Wave 5 and 6 of their action figures. So Wave 5 is highly likely to also come out in 2021, and Wave 6 will likely be the first wave for 2022. In terms of some speculation, Iroh, Suki, Ty Lee, Mei, and Book 3 Katara seem like the obvious, like, you need to do these figures that they haven't covered in the line yet, but nothing has been fully announced yet about which figures they are doing. They're just, in my mind, the obvious characters. You've covered, I think, all the Aangs you can really do, unless you're going to really force Aang into like every wave. So I think you have to move on to do some of the more minor characters. I would guess we will also see at least a third diorama or statue announced from Diamond Select, likely Zuko or Toph, since they really emphasize the bending effect part. One for fire or earth to match the air and water so far would be ideal. McFarlane, Best Action, and Mego will likely start off with the typical characters because, again, they're not going to care about what characters Diamond Select have already done. They're starting their own line of figures, so they're all likely going to start with an Aang, a Zuko, a Katara, that sort of stuff. So we're going to see the main cast again before we get to the minor characters, which, could be frustrating if you are planning to buy like all of these figures from all of these companies, that you have to wait quite a while before you get your like May action figure or something like that. But this is the way it was always going to work, of like wave 1 for Avatar is always going to be some combination of like Aang, Katara, Zuko, Sokka, Toph, those type of characters, and then you move into the other ones. We could see more Korra Funkos, perhaps an exclusive or two ahead of Korra Wave 2, probably 2022. That would, to me, make sense. So that leaves this sort of lineup of potential figures for 2021 looking like this. Avatar The Last Airbender Wave 2 Funko Pops plus the exclusives, however many they announce. Diamond Select Wave 3, 4 and 5 are likely to come out in 2021. Diamond Select Katara Diorama, as well as probably another one. I don't think they'll just leave it off at 2. I can't see them not doing a Zuko, for instance. McFarlane Avatar The Last Airbender Wave 1, McFarlane Korra Wave 1, Best Action Avatar The Last Airbender figures, as well as the Migo figure, and of course the Dark Horse Direct, Aang and Korra bookends. The main things that aren't really confirmed, I suppose, is how McFarlane are going to be doing the waves, in that, like, will they completely treat Avatar and Korra as separate lines, in the sense that, like, will they do 4 figures for Avatar Wave 1 and 4 for Korra Wave 1 for a total of 8, or will they be more sort of like combining it and separating it, and it be more like they'll do, say, 3 Avatar figures and then 1 Korra figure as part of an overall Avatar wave, and they're not really treating them separately? It could mean like one series gets more attention than the other. It depends on exactly how they do it, but that's how the figures are looking up, and that's quite a large amount of figures, given that, like, say, like 2 years ago we had like nothing, the odd like statue or something like that, and now all of a sudden there's like a list 10 things long of action figures. That's pretty crazy, that how far we've advanced. Going to other merchandise, the other notable unique thing would be the Korra Steelbook Blu-ray. So this is the Korra getting the Steelbook exclusive treatment that Avatar got last year. This Blu-ray is going to be released on March 16th, 2021. And yeah, the main thing to point out with this is that this is really just a limited edition. The actual discs, the content on the discs is identical to the standard Blu-ray. You are paying extra money for the packaging, for the steelbooks, the fancy art on the steelbooks, and the fancy box. There's nothing else beyond that you are pre-ordering a thing for $98 that is 3 times as expensive as the standard Blu-ray, just because of the art on the steelbooks. That's the short of it, basically. So, you know, it's there for the collectors, but you don't need to get this if you already have the normal Blu-ray and are fine with that. That's the main thing to point out. In terms of other merch, Zen Monkey and Box Lunch are going to be continuing to release their typical merch of, pins, t-shirts, the usual stuff you'd find in your, Hot Topic style stores. But also, don't be surprised if you see quite a few companies grabbing the Avatar license to make merch after the success that Avatar has had last year on Netflix. That I think at the end of this year, we've already seen with a lot of the action figure companies getting Avatar, as well as a few things like the Screen Comics out of nowhere deciding to get Avatar, showing you that, like, people are making some moves because of how popular Avatar is, and that's very interesting. So yeah, I expect we'll see quite a lot of merch for Avatar in 2021. In terms of expected news based on stuff that's happened this year, this is what I would expect. So something that went sort of forgotten this year, but I guess was more delayed in terms of coming together because of the virus, would be IDW Games' Avatar or Korra game. So we got the Pro Bending game from them a few years ago, and they teased a new Avatar game at the end of their Batman Kickstarter. So hopefully we should get information on the Kickstarter and just the game in general in 2021. I don't know, I doubt they'll have cancelled this. I think this is a popular enough thing. I think they just want to probably wait until the virus calms down to a kind of neutral point. Then they'll go ahead with it so the Kickstarter can be as successful as possible. So yeah, there was no real information as far as I'm aware on this in 2020. So hopefully 2021 is the year this comes together. Next, new Korra comic announcement. I've already touched on this a little bit, but this is going to be a key piece of news in 2021 when this finally gets announced, because I think people are just tired of waiting at this point. What's the delay? What is the situation? Answer the questions about this, please. We've been waiting for this since March 2020, when they basically teased stuff about it. They've said a few things about it and nothing's happened. It needs to finally happen, and it needs to deliver. At this point, it's not good enough for it to just be, here's your comic, who cares what it's about? No, it has to be about something notable in my mind. Will Korra be going down the one-shot trilogy format or sticking to the standard trilogy format? Will Mike be the writer again on the Korra comic? Is there going to be a new artist? You know, why has it taken so long? And what is the situation? It's very difficult, but it's a key announcement. This is really going to tell you about Dark Horse's approach going into the future as to what exactly this is. But we'll move on. So next thing, actual news on the Netflix live action show. So even though this isn't something I'm particularly interested in, it is still something that kind of needs to happen. The show is still going ahead, even though Mike and Brian have left their work on it. It's still going ahead without them. Mike and Brian just are not involved at all in it. So it's been a few years since this was announced, with no real notable update really on it. Perhaps 2021 will finally be when we finally get a sense for how this show is actually shaping up and what exactly it's going to be. Finally, I suppose, some sense of a look at it, perhaps, but who knows. What's next for the novels? So this is key. This is a really important point. So the two Kyoshi novels were the highlights of 2019 and 2020 for Avatar. For me, and I think for a lot of people. While 2021 likely won't have a novel, they should use this year to plan and announce what is next for the novels now that they've been such a success. No information in 2021 on novels would be devastating, in my opinion. A little bit dramatic at the end, but I really do think that if we go through 2021 with no novel release or information even on what's happening, that would be just very telling about like what is happening with the future of the franchise. Like, these two books are incredibly popular and successful. Everyone wants more on this format, and suddenly nothing on it in like over a year, that'd be really disappointing. So I think they have to commit to what's next for this, if not just to show us that they do plan to do more novels. That's the key thing we need to get from this. Next up, Avatar soundtrack release. Will this finally be the year where this happens? So this could finally be the year the soundtrack or soundtracks finally get released. Jeremy Zuckerman has teased progress on these for years, but after the Netflix hype and a very positive recent comment from him, this feels like it actually might happen in 2021. And you can see there on the left what the comment relatively recently was. Someone asked him, is it happening basically? Will there be an Avatar soundtrack? His response this time is stay tuned. So this is different than like, I'm working on it, I'm working behind the scenes to try and get stuff done. This is like, wait for an announcement that he feels it's just about to happen behind the scenes, but then an announcement might happen. It actually feels like, yeah, progress is being made, and it's hard to think that how can Nickelodeon look at like, people want this soundtrack but we can't quite go ahead with it. But now Avatar is super popular on Netflix and people want the soundtrack. How can you not go ahead with that? So this, it would be incredible. This would be huge if it finally got released. And that can't be understated, like just how big of a news thing this would be if it happens. So this is a key piece of news if it were to happen. Finally, I was questioning if I should put this in or not, but I do think a lot of people do feel that some of the news we got this year is kind of like, yeah, like it opens the door to, for the first time in years, yeah, maybe a third series could potentially happen. So hope for a third series. After years of this not being a possibility at all, suddenly Avatar is hugely popular again. Viacom, Paramount is going all in on their own streaming platform, and they are aware of how big Avatar is. Mike and Brian are no longer involved with the Netflix live action show, and all of a sudden we have all of the ingredients for this to potentially happen. So you have the creators, who would be key in making a third series, free after a disappointing experience on their last project. so they might want to prove themselves again. So it feels like Mike and Brian are finally in a position where they might want to do a third series. On the high up company side of things, in terms of funding this thing and making it happen, Viacom Paramount are also in the right position where they are going to want as much original content as possible for whatever it's called, Paramount Plus, I think it is, for that to be as popular as it could be. And the fact that at an investor call about Paramount Plus, they specifically mentioned Avatar as like something that they could potentially do as a piece of new content for this streaming platform. It fits that Mike and Brian, they want an Avatar show realistically at some point. They know how popular it is after the Netflix hype. It could all come together. And I think the other thing that might have held them back is like, if they had to make a show for Nickelodeon again. Now suddenly, this thing isn't going to go on TV. This thing's going to go on that streaming platform. Now they're going to know that it's just, this is where you get the show. There's no like, it'll be pulled off TV like what happened with Korra or anything like that. So there's a little bit more sort of safety security with regards to just, it's just for the streaming platform. And that could be the environment that Mike and Brian want. So I'm not going to say right now it's going to happen. We're going to get news in 2021 of this happening. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear some rumors and some talk about, this really ramping up. Because Mike and Brian, it was quite a few months ago that they left the Netflix show. And they both said in both of their statements that they are planning to work on Avatar going forward. And unless we finally get the announcements of what's next for the comics, and they are really heavily involved, maybe them working on Avatar is a third series. Who knows? I just want to put it in here as like a maybe. It's on the table again, at the very least, I think. And then the final thing here, 2021 overall, the lack of a novel will be felt, especially if Dark Horse do not step up with their own new story content. The one-shots can only do so much, but if they can deliver with the next Korra comic and show a solid plan for what is next, it will help things. This year looks great from a merchandise point of view. We will have multiple companies making figures and statues, giving us a great choice in what will be available. And if things like the soundtrack release happens and we hear about new novels, this could be a strong year by the end. And so basically what I'd say from this is just that I think if you look at the stuff that's confirmed right now, it looks solid, but not great, not particularly stand out, because there is no novel this year. We don't know what's next for Korra Comics, and some of this news may or may not happen. So the key points, like I say here, is Dark Horse delivering with what's next for Avatar, what's next for Korra. The merchandise, I think, just by default already looks fantastic already and could get better depending on how the announcements go. And then, news, soundtracks, potentially third series news, and some other stuff like the IDW game, IDW Games game. If that all works, this could take this year from being solid to being pretty good. I don't think this perhaps quite looks like it's going to be the year that's going to be like the best one ever. I don't think this is maybe quite the year for like the super hype to happen. But who knows? It could be, depending on how, I suppose, a lot of companies, a lot of decisions are made in response to how successful Avatar was in 2020 on Netflix. So, and I think that's going to be something that's very interesting to track over the course of next year. And that's why I think, follow my channel in 2021 as we go over all of the news as it happens, like I always do, because I think a lot of this is going to build up and it will give us a sense for where things are going. But they're my thoughts on 2021. So I'm going to turn it over to you. In the comments, let me know, how do you think 2021 is going to go? Your thoughts on the story content coming next year, what books are going to come out, how the merchandise is shaping up, and then some of the news stuff that could happen. What do you think is going to happen in 2021, and how good of a year do you think it's going to be? But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.